Hi and welcome back. So the first thing to do is going to be to create our first CSS file. So go into your static CSS folder and create a new file. If you see style sheet in that menu, then create a new style sheet. If not, simply create a new file called main.css. You can name it whatever you want, of course. And now here we're going to have to do something to define the style of our fields. So if you remember from the last video, we had a very basic website. So we've got two fields and a submit button. These are the default fields and submit button for Mac OS X, which is what I'm using. If you're using Windows or if you're using Internet Explorer, they might be slightly different. And they are here at the top left of the page. They're all very close together. It's not a very pretty site, essentially. So what we want to do at first is to make sure that they're not appearing at the very top of the page. So how would we do that? Well, the first thing we have to realize is CSS can interact with any element in your page such as long as it knows how to get to it. So let's go into our base.html file and find out where this login form is. So this login form is inside the HTML block, then it is inside the body block, and then it is inside a form, and then we have the three input types there. So as we can see, we've got HTML, then body, and then form, and then the input types. This form does not have any way of identifying it as unique, which means that we can essentially interact with the form as an entity, and if we had more, we would interact with them all at the same time. Or we can give it a unique identifier, and then we can interact with this specific form. So if we chose to interact with all forms, then if we had another form, both forms would be interacted with. If we give it a unique identifier, we can interact with this one only. So let's give it a unique identifier of login-form, and I'll explain really what I mean with interacting with all of them or just one of them. In our main.css file, we can do something like this: form, and then we can define some styles inside these brackets. Now, form is a CSS entity. It is this thing here. So if we did this, and we define some styles for this keyword, all of the forms in our website would use these styles. So that may be what we want, or maybe we want the login form to have a different set of styles from the registration form or from the contact us form, if we had them. So instead of interacting with all of the forms on the website, we're going to interact with just one, the login-form. So I'm going to copy that, and then I'm going to paste that here. But of course, CSS needs a way to know that this is not an HTML entity. This is different from just form, because this is one specific form. In order to do that, we put the hash symbol in front. And this tells us we're going to interact with an element with this ID. So now we've found out that this is our form, and we can give it some styles. So the first thing we wanted to do, as we said before, was separate it a bit from the top. So in order to do that, we're going to give it some margin. So we say margin-top, 25px, semicolon, 25 pixels. And then we save that. And if we were to go into Chrome and run this right now, we would actually see no difference at all. I'm going to refresh this, and notice how it's still at the top left. So we have written our main.css file, but we haven't linked it to our HTML file. So we go into our base.html, and here under the title, we're going to say we want to link this page to that CSS file and use the styles defined in it. So we say link rel, and this is the type of element that we're linking, so it's a style sheet. And then href is where the document lives. using Flask, we want to use a specific way to reference these elements. So do open and close curly braces, 2 of them, and then we're going to say URL_for static, and then file name equals css/main.css. And then we can close that. So what have we done here? We've defined a link to a style sheet with the following reference. for, too many M's there, URL for the static folder, and the file name is css/main.css. So inside the CSS folder, the main.css file. And in order, the reason why we do this is because Flask is going to be seeing this in our page and saying, you want something that's in a different folder, so I'm going to replace this for the HTML code that would lead you there. So what HTML would lead us there? We are in the base.html file, so we'd have to go, we're inside the templates folder, base.html file, so we'd have to go up a folder into the source folder, then go into the static folder, then go into the CSS folder, and then into the main.css folder. So instead of this, what we would have to do is ... to go up a folder, and then static, and then CSS, and then main.css. We would have to do that if we did not want to use the URL for method. But because we've got Jinja, we can do this. Remember, if you're just making HTML files, you cannot do this. You can only do this with Flask and Jinja. We can do this, which simplifies the process, because if we then move our template elsewhere, normally, if we moved our template elsewhere, we would have to do something like that. Go up 2 folders, and then static, and then CSS, and then main.css. So if we moved our templates, we would have to append 2 dots before all of our references. So now, right now we've only got 1, but if we had more, then that would be a bit of a hassle. So instead, we simply tell Jinja to calculate it for us. And that's the way we do it. Okay, so now let's go back into Chrome and refresh this, and now we can see that the form has indeed gone down. So we've linked the style sheet to the base, and the login extends the base, so it's also linked to it. And now the form has that style. Okay, so quite a lot of info to digest in just one video, so I'll leave it there for now, and then I'll see you in the next one where we're going to be actually doing something with the login form. So I'll see you there.